நாங்க தமிழ்லயே பேசி முடிச்சிட்டோம். அதுவும் கர்நாடகால கூப்பிட்டுருக்காங்கல்ல, நம்ம தமிழ்ல பேசி தொலை. Okay, so how many? I can't see. I'm not used to this. My net is not probably too good because I'm in some place in Bhopal in a hotel where there is
your
Wi-Fi.
Image is clear. No problem.
Image is clear. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Voice is also clear. Okay.
Just waiting for Vasuki.
Vijeta ma'am, your voice is breaking a little. Could you repeat what you just said?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, ma'am. Now it's fine.
Is Vasuki Bhaskar joining us?
Yes, he's joining us. He's trying to log into Teams.
Teams is new for a lot of people, no? So unless you are part of
a lot of browsers, so he's trying to figure that out. Are
you in your college? Your voice breaks a bit, unless it's only for me.
No, I'm sure it's the network. I am in college now, so the network is a little unstable.
You have so much natural light and a tree behind you.
That's a wallpaper.
Oh, enna ஏமாத்துறாங்கப்பா இப்பெல்லாம் நம்பவே முடியாது. What you see is what you don't get. You're frozen again, Vijeta.
Sorry, I couldn't hear. Am I audible? Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better, but suddenly your image also froze for a few seconds now.
Yeah, I was.
Your voice keeps fading out.
Did you say something? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I said your voice keeps dying. And your image freezes and starts again. You're frozen again.
Just 5 more minutes, he says. He opened it on Safari. It doesn't open with Safari usually. Teams is a very irritating app.
Yeah, Team is Microsoft, no? So they have their own.
Yasmin, are you here? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let me introduce you to my student, Anand. Yasmin will be moderating this session. Yasmin has also put us in touch with Condenser. And then, so she was the one who thought of this panel and thought we can go ahead with it. Yasmin, is your camera working fine?
Yes, ma'am. Hopefully. If it happens to glitch out at some point, then that is a bad network, but I will turn it on for now and see how long it lasts.
So can you tell us a bit about the audience and the festival, if you have time? The audience are students mostly from St. Joseph College and other colleges?
Only St. Joseph.
Go ahead, Yasmin.
Okay. So the literary festival is open to all, but being a St. Joseph's College, event. Most of our audience are St. Joseph's College students.
Okay.
Yesterday, we had a panel with Paramita Vora, and many people from other institutions, from other spaces also came and joined us. The festival is the English department's baby, uh, and it is a literary festival that invites people who like to write, people who like to read, people who do both, and people who are interested in doing either both or either. So, this is the 10th year that we are running Meta, and we have panels, we have contests as well. And we also have talks that are given by professors or people from different industries. So, a few days ago, we had Shalini Srinivasan. Professor Shalini came to talk to us about graphic novels. So, that's one instance of what Meta does. So, it is something that is aimed at college students, but it is not only for college students, it's for anybody who has an interest in the literary world. So Meta's structured around that interest and that passion.
So did you fight with Mark?
of English and the Literary Society of St. Joseph's College. Today we have an online panel discussion about independent publishing houses. And we have with us Mr. Vasagi Bhaskar of Neelam, S. Anand of Navayana, and Kannan Sundaram of Kalachuvadu. Moderating this panel is Yasmin from 2nd GIP, who I would like to invite now to open the panel discussion.
Thank you, Amna. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It is my privilege to be able to converse with three renowned figures in the publishing industry in India. I think that Kannan Uncle is the one that I am most familiar with, but Anand sir and Bhaskar sir are also people that I think everybody in the publishing industry knows of and sort of uses as a reference point for independent publishing in the Indian world today. So, being a panel of independent publishers in the times that we are living in today, where publishing itself is an arduous task and independent publishing even more so, I'd like to center today's conversation about your journey of being a publisher in India, of being an independent publisher. And there are two things that this could go into. One is just how you came into the world of publishing and what it was like to become a publisher in India, publishing the works that you do. I know that Kalachuvadu also does translations as well. The second conversation that this could go into is being an independent publisher during the pandemic. So this is the first direction that I think we could start this conversation off on. And all three panelists are invited to answer. Perhaps Anand sir, would you like to go first?
Okay. Hello everyone. Am I clearly audible? Because some of your images are frozen sometimes, and I'm not sure whether it's because of my internet or am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Yasmin, I can't even see you. I mean, it pixelates and it.
Anand
Am
sir,
I audible even? I'm not able to hear back anything.
Yeah,
Okay,
you are
okay,
audible
okay.
right
So
now.
I'll go ahead without much ado because. Sorry, it disappeared again, my voice.
No, sir, you're audible now.
Okay, more or less. So stop me in case my screen freezes or because I'm not sure how good my internet here is. Then I'll turn off my video in case there is a problem with having the video on. So am I clearly audible right now? Shall I go on?
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Okay, okay. I think there's a lag, but that's fine. So first off, some of you, I won't assume that people know about Navyana. Some of you may have heard of Navyana, some of you may have read a book or two. Since I don't know who are all attending, I'll just say that Navyana was started in 2003 on a pure whim, and I use it with the oral pun. There is WHIM, Vim, and also there was some Vim, which was, I was young, and I was misled into thinking that one could be a publisher with no resources. Right. The only kind of capital that the whole idea was something that was seeded in my head by my friend Ravi Kumar, who back then was a bank employee in Pondicherry, who that was his day job, and everybody in the Tamil what you call public intellectual sphere had a day job and for which they earned money, and then evening job or a night job in which they put their passion in. So Ravi Kumar was a prominent public intellectual who was associated with a host of small little magazines. And these are truly independent little magazines with print runs of 500,000, brought out also when the person had the money to bring it out. The regularity was dubious and such. But Ravi Kumar was an influence on me even before we decided to put our heads together to start Navyana. It primarily started because I wrote a story in Outlook on what was happening with Dalit literature, what kind of Dalit literature was getting published. And I had a bunch of interviews with about 10 or 12 different, what in NGO terms is called stakeholders, so publishers, translators, and why was autobiography being prioritized. So we started Navyana trying to do one book, and I told him, and he said, let's start a publishing house to publish all that you can't do at Outlook. Plus the fact that there is nothing in the English language publishing world which addresses caste. So we started out on that, and back then I had no idea about the word independent publishing also. Let me be very frank. It was just that one is starting a publishing house, and one sees it as independent of independent. When you say independent of what? Why is Hoopa not an independent publisher? There are many old publishers in India which are family run, family owned, which have gone on for 75 to 100 years in Hindi, in Tamil, in Telugu, in English, which can also be called independent publishing. But there is this small little club of people, which includes me, Kannan, Tulika, Samya, Leftward, called independent. Can a CPM publishing house like Leftward, which is affiliated to the party in many ways, be called independent? So when we use the word independent, I think we need to think about what kind of independent. Small independent, large entity. So with all this is something that I'm speaking with a certain kind of a retrospective insight. When we started it, it was on a whim, like I said. We started with 4 books priced at 40 to 60 rupees. We had no idea of what is called the market. Distribution was a mess. And over the years, we have been seeing discounts increase. And in the Tamil world is different from the English world in terms of you want to reach out to a very wide market, which is subcontinental, and then you do not know how things work, and you figure it out along the way. You fumble and stumble. And I just want to give you a quick comparison to how independent publishing works in, say, what is called the developed world, whether it's Australia or the US or UK. Here you have big grant making bodies. And in the US and in the UK and in large parts of Europe, less in Europe than in US and UK, you have a lot of university presses. Stanford University Press, Columbia University Press. All these are completely subsidized. Their budgets are underwritten. There is no mandate to say you have to make profit. You need to do good books. And they manage to survive and thrive because they have full-fledged staff for marketing, for rights, for publicity. There's something that is wonderful about that kind of a model where everything gets subsidized. In India, you do not have university press culture. Please don't mistake Oxford University Press for a university press. It is a corporation. It's different. And except for Jadavpur University Press and one or two others which bring out occasional publications, Madras University used to bring out occasional publications, but there's no rigor of a kind of a publishing process that happens in any of these places. These are one-off instances. So in India, you have a scene where you either are from a traditional publishing background with fathers and uncles and family business that you inherit. There are a lot of independent publishers, for instance, in Bengal, whom you're not going to invite to your panel. So I want you, when you put this panel together, to think of what you call independent publishing, why you include somebody who is cool and not somebody who is not cool. Like, why won't you invite Rupa as an independent press? So this is a question we need to ask. Why won't you? Why would you call Leftward an independent press? That's something that I ask myself. But yes, I recognize them as independent. So in this kind of a mosaic, where in India in the last and once this whole kind of the fact that you could have a desktop and then start a publishing, you just have a computer and you're able to typeset pages, you find a printer and you're able to deliver books. But how do you reach the market becomes a question. In the last 17, 18 years of Navyana's existence, we have stumbled along, and right now we are distributed fairly well across the country, and we have tried independent distribution, which didn't really work for us, and now we have tied ourselves to HarperCollins, which warehouses and distributes us. Effectively, you just see a Navyana book, but the process has changed. A lot of it might be news for you that Verso, which is considered an independent press, on terms similar to how Navyana works with a bigger corporation, they work with Penguin Random House, which is a multinational corporation. Work with meaning they warehouse, stock, and distribute. And post Amazon, the way things have changed, and the way Amazon can start a publishing house and then shut it like that at the snap of a finger. The way the big fish managed to do. I would compare, I don't know how many of you eat fish, but we are like a netili. Netili is like a small anchovy, right? It's very tasty and it will survive. And it's one of the most preponderant fishes in the world. So everybody who has a taste for fish will eat it. Of course, suraputta and all is like big stuff, and you eat a big fish like a seer fish or a kingfish. You get more meat, so to say. But it's a similar thing. It's a question of Yona and the whale sometimes. So you are a small fish, and you can survive inside the tummy of a big fish also. So that, in short, is that. And second, Navyana struggles in the sense that we still do not, we are registered as a so-called for-profit company right now, and we are not registered as an NGO or any such thing. And a lot of publishing houses in India, which are so-called independent, I'm using the word so-called with all the pejorative sense in which I don't want to name names, but they start something like, they have to start something like a trust or an NGO kind of an outfit where they can do other stuff and then manage to keep. I'm not criticizing them, but that's the only way to sustain if you have to generate employment. Navyana is so small in the last 17 years, of the last 17, 18 years, only in the last 4.5 years have I had a full-time editor other than me. No marketing person, no rights person, no publicity division. So you do everything yourself. So we managed to produce 6 or in a best year, 8 titles a year. And to briefly answer, stop me when I run out of time, until the pandemic question. So pandemic really hit us hard, like it hit everybody, So anybody, any segment of the population, from especially those who are not truly well off, like the super rich in India. So it affects everybody. So it affects the book trade, and one has also seen the kind of accentuation of the fact that Amazon becomes a bigger and bigger player, and independent bookshops as shutting down. And when we say independent bookshops, just like we say independent presses, we need to be very careful. These independent bookshops are also sometimes run for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years along family lines. And when it comes to my earlier system, before we move to this Prakash Books plus HarperCollins kind of distribution, a lot of you probably do not even think where the book is coming from, what is distribution, how does this reach one something like Amazon. But in the post-pandemic phase and in the pre-pandemic phase, what was a real challenge was independent bookshops would run up huge debts because they're not able to pay. They can't give 60-day credit. They take 90 days. They take 140 days. And the person they would pay last is an independent distributor. So in effect, independent publishing, when I was doing it with independent distributors and independent booksellers, it meant that you basically waited and waited and waited forever for the money to flow back. What is wonderful about being a small independent is you get to do the kind of books that you want to do, and you establish a kind of a politics that you want to do. But it's a very difficult task, even for us. Out of the 10, the mainstream market will absorb 2 or 3 titles of our 10. The rest will fall by the wayside, even within that. So there is a pecking order within an Aviana kind of a list. So this is a kind of a broad picture I'm telling you, and a kind of a ecology, the landscape in wonderful titles that we try to put out, which don't get reviewed, which don't really get what you call much display and much recognition. So we back all these titles. Some of our poetry titles take 8 to 7 years sometimes to sell 1,000 copies. I'm sure this is the case with what Kannan would also say. So I'll stop there and let others give you a picture of where they come. And the only advantage or disadvantage I have, or a fact of the matter is, the other two are Tamil publishers, and Neelam has just started doing books in the last couple of years. Kannan has been around much longer with Kalachuda as a magazine. Again, they have the benefit of being a magazine which takes that content. I'm sure Kannan will speak about that. These are all different, distinctive kind of journeys and struggles, is what I would think. And I'm the only English publisher on this panel. Yeah, English language publisher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah.
So if Kannan uncle and Bhaskar sir don't mind, there are a couple of things that Anand sir said that I was wondering the two of you would mind speaking about. One thing that he mentioned was that the beauty of being an independent publisher was that they got to publish the books that they wanted to do, and they could establish a certain kind of value, or they adhere to a certain set of values or the principles that they wanted to bring out in their publication. Bhaskar sir, would you mind speaking about this when it comes to Neelam Publications? Because there is a certain there is this idea behind Neelam Publications of not victimizing the Dalit identity and not constraining the Dalit identity to just a caste identity that has been oppressed. There is more to it than that. There is also art, there is aesthetics involved, and that is what Neelam Publications foreground. So could you tell us a little bit about what it means to have a magazine like Neelam, which is effectively establishing a certain political position with what it is doing with the writers and the artists that it is bringing into the field?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all for inviting me. And Anand and Kannan sir, they have established themselves in their own way, not comparing them both, but they are established professionals in mean of this publication and other works. So we are like, it's been 3 years Neelam has started. The first year we have entered into this field as a seller, and then later we had a confidence of starting in publication. So the Neelam getting into a publishing house is a very interesting story actually, because my background and my educational background, and when you consider everything, I have no way connected to this publishing house and nothing. We have no family background, nothing. So it's very new to me. So the only thing is, but we had an interest, and actually hope you know, it was for the Neelam was owned by Director Ranjit. So basically, he was, he had a very interested. He's very interested in publishing, and more than making movies. His core interest area was like publishing books and to getting into fiction and non-fiction literature. And he's very curious about that industry. So we plan to get into the industry with all rights and wrongs, and we have started this thing. Apart from being an independent publisher, we face like when it comes to a public domain, particularly I want to tell, because 3 years back we have as soon as we started the publication, we entered into like a book fair like Bapasi and all. So like every year we faced modern discrimination because we don't hide our identity, and we are very conscious about that, and we are very open to say that we we concentrate only Dalit narratives. It doesn't mean we appreciate only, we recognize only a Dalit writers or nothing like that. The Dalit narratives, I think that term is the good term actually. So we are very conscious and we are clear about that. In what way we plan to survive in this industry. So due to that, we faced a lot of modern discriminations, and there was no appreciation. We are not, we don't want to experience it, and it's not our main motive to get an appreciation or all. But when you openly get into this field without any without hiding yourself, what are all the problems we face? This the Neelam had faced each and every issues for past 3 years. So just I'm not being in a victim position to say this, but I just want to let know everyone that what if you reveal your identity and reveal your politics, what are all the problems will be faced is very important in even this print and publishing house industry. So each and every movement and each and every the try will be criticized. They will label your motives, and they will keep on judging with whom you associate and with whom you being a friend. As a friend, as a associate, a work associate, whatever it may be. So there's a judgmental each and every time for the every moment of our work. So in this case, we started a publication, and the very important, I feel that the past 2 years we have also started a magazine. So it was like a multicolor magazine. So it was like an 110 JSM, 130 JSM paper. Also, people, many people who have, the well wishers actually advised us to not do that because we have many magazines which comes and go and in the market, but people will quote Kalachud and say they have faced a lot of issues and they are facing the reality issues, and even though they are not able to survive, and they are keep fighting to survive in this industry. So being a very new, why you have people were worried about the costing and all. So as in the first level of discussion, I just want to say, in a Dalit life and a Dalit politics and Dalit art, actually the quality which we try to produce, the Dalit art deserves the quality that which we try to produce, because we concentrate, as we concentrate in art as well as in literature. So for literature, the text, the white and black text are more enough for you to to say what you want to do and all. But if it is an art, it's more of like a color. So we have many things to make to the world to let know about the color of the art and everything. So you can't just go with black and white paper, and you can't give the quality in black and white paper. So we chose the multicolor paper. So I'm like I just want to pinpoint this as a very important point, because there's a narrative in the society that whom have to be in what way they have to be they set the limits for everyone. So just be for each and every time we just want to cross the border they have set, and we have to face all the issues which exist every time. So just as an for an introduction, I will stop here, and I will discuss later, and I have many points to to end up with also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was extremely important for all of us to hear. Hanan uncle, there was this interesting thing which Bhaskar sir said, that Dalit art deserves the quality that we are trying to produce. And Kala Chivada is also a publishing house that emphasizes the quality of what it produces. So I recall you saying, even when it comes to translations, it is quite difficult to get a translation that is completely accurate to the source material, to have the words that actually convey the meaning of what was intended in the source material. But you are meticulous about that quality. So can you tell us a little bit about the translating work that you do, and what distinguishes that in your publishing house? And later, if we could circle back to this politics that you are working with in the publishing house. So Kala Chivada is an institution that prioritizes Tamil culture and the contributions of Tamil writers and artists today. And in our political atmosphere, we have a chief minister who gives enough value to that. So could you also tell us a little bit about how you're working in the political atmosphere that we are in now, and what you're doing with your publishing in the context of that atmosphere?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, Yasmin, for inviting me to speak in this your festival. It's an honor to be part of St. Joseph College Meta Festival and to be able to interact with your students today. And so when it comes to translation, so the publishing house started in 1995. I think the first translation we published was probably in the year 2000. And initially we started with translating from Malayalam. That was the first book. The second book was a translation from I think Argentina. We got out the writer online. Just then emails had opened up and we got the rights and we published a writer called Sorrentino in Tamil. And since then we have been devoting a lot of time and effort toward translations, as you had mentioned. We translate from many Indian languages and also from many international languages. So how and why we translate is, of course, that I think translations are very important, and Tamil has been historically a language that is very open to translations, and it is only through translations that we can, understand other cultures, negotiate with them and converse with them, and also understand our place in the world and what needs to be changed, and so many other things. And so how process of translations involves what you call the rights trade, that is buying and selling of rights. And to understand that, the first year I went to the Chennai Book Fair. That was in 2001. The very same year, the next month, I traveled to Delhi to participate in the New Delhi World Book Fair. So that opened up the world of Indian languages to me. So you can see publishers from all nearly 26 languages displayed in NBT those days. And so to walk around the fair, to visit all of them, look at their books, try to understand the literature, the context, the culture, and talk to the publishers, that was very exciting effort. And in 2007, through a program called the Frankfurt Book Fair Fellowship Program, I went to the Frankfurt Book Fair for the first time. And since then, up till the pandemic, I was a visitor to Frankfurt every year. And that opened us to the international market. And that's how we got into buying rights from so many international languages, especially the small minority languages like Flemish or Slovenia or Icelandic, and translate their works to Tamil. So we are focusing on more on the languages that have never been translated to Tamil before, like let's say Norwegian or even the Turkish writing. And we were less of the other major languages which are already come to Tamil, much more like the American literature or UK literature. And we try to focus more on the minor languages. And some of these translations work very well in Tamil in terms of sales, some of them don't. But we continue the process because I think it's very important for Tamil readers and Tamil writers to be able to understand what is happening in the world in terms of writing and in terms of literature, and then that will definitely over the time inspire Tamil writing to go to a better, different place. So that is what I will say about translations. And the second part of the question, the cultural context, is that. So I think we all know the present cultural context in India is highly intolerant. But what I have to say is that in relative terms, we have always faced a very intolerant society as a publisher and as a magazine since the 1990s. I'm not including anybody, I'm not excluding anybody. It's just that when you do not agree with something, maybe a short story which you find vulgar, or an article which you don't agree with, or a novel that disgusts you, whatever may be the case, or a poetry you think is very provocative, the way you react is not, you don't react to the idea, you don't want to work against the idea, but you want to ban that idea, you want to ban that expression, you want to cut it down, you want to stop it. So that has always been the instinct of all sections of society, as far as I can see, is that when they talk about freedom of expression, my understanding is that what they really mean is their right to freedom of expression, to say what they want, and not the others' right to say what they don't want to hear. So that's always been the case. But what we are facing now is a completely different context, where it's not just intolerance towards ideas, it's also backed by strong violence, where it's not threat to kill you, it might actually kill you. So that's a huge shift, and we also face this in many ways. Living in Tamil Nadu, we are living today in relatively a better place than probably many states of India, definitely. But as a publisher and as a magazine editor, what I always keep in mind is a Thirukkural which advises you how to negotiate power. The Thirukkural says, I'll just paraphrase it in English, that when you address power, you behave like you warm yourself in the fire. Don't go too near and don't stay too far.
Say it in Tamil.
அகலாமல் அணுகாமல் தீக்காய் வரப்போல.
Much better, yeah.
So that's one way how he of course means the king, but I think it's a good advice to all of us that when we get the opportunity, that we make sure that we don't get too close to power, then it might in turn burn you. So that is one thing that if you want to be a truly independent publisher, and in Tamil there are no other publishers. All of us are independent, and the best way for you to work is that remember the scroll all the time. And you, as a publisher, as somebody in the cultural sphere, you cannot avoid negotiating with Baba. But is that how you do it? I think that matters. And as far as Kalachud is concerned, the fact that we are in Nagarkoil, nearly 800 kilometers away from Chennai, allows us to be a little more independent than other publishers, because we're not part of the Tamil publishing industry in that sense that we are not in Chennai. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Unless if you have a question, then please.
The audience is free to ask questions. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat box, or you may raise your hand and unmute in case you have a question. Okay. We'll just wait a couple of seconds for questions. In the meantime, oh wait, never mind. Anand said you've got your hand up.
I want to know the politics of Kannan being an uncle and me being a sir, and so that's an aside. Yeah. I haven't got it. I'm an uncle too. In fact,
Yasmin's father is my friend.
Okay. So I have a question. I have a question for Kannan uncle, which is, now when you say you're looking at minority, this goes back to this thing of first world subsidies. Now Neelam is not in a position to look at what is, unless you go to Frankfurt, unless you develop these connections. Now, whether it's Turkey or Finland or Norway or Slovenia, all these places come to Frankfurt, open a stall, they have this cultural fund, they have this Danish people want to say, please publish my book. Of course, they're English, they're looking at UK and US. They're not coming to an English publisher in India to say, do a French book. The French Book Office, all of them have a very proactive way of encouraging the literatures to be translated. And these are subsidized. Now, it's good that they're getting subsidized, and good that Kannan is doing this, and they could equally be doing this, trying to do this with Marathi and others. And Kannan has opened up this thing, like of saying, go to Frankfurt and see where you can sell your rights and where you can buy your rights. Right. So that is something that is structurally possible, because it's not happening from African writing, Kannan. Whether it is, look at independent publishing, what Seagull does. Seagull produces it like a European wine list. Right. All their authors are from first world. They're not looking at Africa. They're not looking at what is, when you say marginal literature, there's a certain politics to the way capital makes it possible for certain. And in India, we can expect no help from any state or any government in terms of saying, I mean, maybe Stalin might do it now, but it's actually the mandate of MEA and Ministry of External Affairs and so on. I remember these people who run Jaipur Literature Festival trying to lobby with the previous Congress government at the center to try to do something like this push. Remember, Kannan, this was pre-Modi days. Even then it didn't work. From Nehru to now, the state has not even been interested in saying, let's take books from India and make sure they get translated abroad. Forget all the biases and all the partisan nature in which Indian state might do this. But there's not even a fig leaf of an approach saying that we want to do it. The traffic moves from the first world to Tamil or Marathi or Bangla or whoever wants to do it. So that's something I just wanted to make as an observation.
Yeah, no, that's true. That when you go to Frankfurt, you are only able to meet publishers who manage to come to Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And from those regions where publishers can't afford to come to Frankfurt, it's a much more difficult position to be able to reach them. The way you can do is probably, by addressing, trying to translate Francophone writing, that writers from all around the world, colonized by France, who write in French, but they write their own experience from Africa, or so that's one way you can work around that. So what we can do is that, unless you are able to travel directly to Africa and meet the publishers there, the other way is to find other means to do what you want to do. Slowly look at the opportunities, and you get to meet some publishers when they come into the invitation program in Frankfurt.
Invitation.
So keep your eyes open and don't miss those opportunities, and always try to meet them. So that is something I try to do, and that's how I have met a few African publishers that I have managed to meet. And so that's the way you can work. You have to work with what you get. And the one, if you can afford to go to only one book fair in the world per year, then Frankfurt I see as the best opportunity, and that's what I do. When it comes to grants, it is very good that many languages, that you really want to translate Oran Pamuk, and to translate Oran Pamuk, you also get a fund. So that's very nice. And so the way I try to operate is that two things. One is that since there are so much opportunities, there are so much languages and so much literature available, and for a Tamil publisher, it makes no sense to translate somebody who's the present superstar of writing in Europe. It doesn't make any difference whether you're going to translate somebody now or somebody who wrote 10 years before. So you can afford to sit back and read and find the best novel that you like and pick that novel, and then see if you can get a grant. So the way I operate is that once we decide on publishing a work, whether that process, whether you get a grant or you don't get a grant, you translate it into Tamil. So that's how I work. So that's how I want to keep my independence and not make sure that while I take grants, I don't get trapped in grants. That you don't work the other way around. That instead of getting a grant for the book you want to translate, you don't move away from that and see what books get a grant and translate that book. So that's a very thin line separating that. And I think you have to be very careful not to cross over from getting a grant for the book that you want to bring to Tamil to translating a book for which grant is available. That's a balance you have to make.
There's a question from the audience.
Yeah.
So 21 EJP F28. They ask, how do you decide that a foreign book can suit the Tamil or Indian audience? So any of the panelists can comment. Bhaskar sir, would you like to say something or?
No, I think Kannan sir is the right person to answer.
Okay.
So there are two things that that you can decide that this book is something that will work in Tamil. That's one way of deciding to translate the book. And the second reason to translate the book can be that this is a book that should be read in Tamil. Even it may not really gel with Tamil readers, this is a book that they should read. This is a book that that should influence Tamil writing, and therefore you should translate it. And we translate for both reasons.
Can I add something here? I just put a little thing in the group there. So, for instance, we published a book from French, but rarely does an Indian publisher, independent publisher doing in English, get a chance to work, because the cream of the French, even if the French are subsidizing you, etc. So the best of it will go to bigger publishers or to other global people in the US and UK. But here was a French woman writing about the story of Raja Sailesh from Madhubani. And Raja Sailesh is a Dalit icon. And this was you can't call it fable, you can't call it fiction, you can't call it history. It's a wonderful, magical text that this woman wrote in French. We sought sample translations. Then we managed to get French Book Office subsidy to an extent, because it didn't cover the cost of translation. Cost of translation, say, from French to English is very expensive. So it's to the order of, a French person working on translation will charge something like 3,000 to 4,000 euros to translate a book. Whereas in India, the kind of advances we give translators are too bad to even be discussed in public, especially if you're an independent publisher. Even bigger presses like Penguin and HarperCollins and others, you do translations in India for the love of it. Am I not right, Kannan? You don't do it. Yeah. You don't do it for the love of money.
No.
So the kind of, and if you have to divide the royalties between the translator and the author, and that little peanut that you get called 8% or 10% is further split. It's like half a peanut, right? So even when we did this, and now this book doesn't get reviewed in India much. Who is Martine Lecause? What is she writing about a Dalit story from her? So there are these issues which are very kind of difficult to traverse when you get into this zone of translations. The kind of translations I have published, most translators either don't take money or take a token money, or I negotiate with them saying, especially when we do Dalit authors, we tell the Savarna translator. Invariably, there is this division of labor. Dalit author, Savarna or white translator or foreign translator. So, and they usually have a university job. So I tell them, don't take any money. Let me give the author something. So they agree. So it's a negotiation. It's a negotiation of that involves strategy, love, kindness, all kinds of things. That's all I wanted to say in terms of this.
Okay. If I could just interrupt the audience questions for a second. Bhaskar sir, both Kannan uncle and Anand uncle, I'm just going to say uncle, Anand uncle, they have spoken about the monetary aspect of publishing. So, for example, Kannan uncle was talking about grants, and Anand uncle was talking about university presses that are running with full-fledged staff, and they're subsidized. So it's not like their books are being, it's not like their publications are being released for the necessity of profit. So for a publishing house, having an audience that is interested and willing to read the publications that are being brought out of their own volition is important. And you want the audience to also place value in the kind of things that they are reading and what you're publishing. So when it comes to Neelam publication, you tell us a little bit about the audience that is reading these works and how it is sort of how they're responding to it. Have you seen a shift in the audience or how it has changed from when you began and where it is now? Because all three of the all of the publishers on this panel, their publications and their publishing houses are all aimed at adding something to society, of wanting the public to read something that they can think about and mull over, certain ideas, certain values that they want to impart through what they are sort of bringing into the public domain. So, could you tell us a little bit about the audience of Neelam publications and if you have witnessed any shifts or responses?
Yeah. So basically, from the day one, we purely depend upon the audiences and audiences of Neelam, because here in Tamil, in Tamil industry, we have a set of opinion makers. They will create opinions, and they will market it, and they will mainstream it. So I'm not blaming it, but the politics is always there. But the connection which we directly have with our audiences, I think it's very soulful actually. So whatever the texts and the books which has been released by Neelam Publications as a like a wide response from Neelam. So it's not about only Neelam books. It's about any progressive books or any Dalit narrative books or any Baba Saheb's books or fiction or non-fiction. There is always a big audience who get into Neelam and they buy books. They feel happy. In fact, they feel happy to get those books in Neelam. So we have created it, and I don't say we have created it. I think it's always there, and we just monitored it, and we have what we have done is we put it up together at one point, and we have monitored it that it has a huge response, and people are really willing, because see there's a two kind of mindset in the society. Like one is like how you are actually and how you want to be. So it's actually there in the society. So I'm not saying people who get into Neelam or people who get into any progressive narrations, and I don't say they are progressive in their real time life and all. I don't want to get into that, but they really want to know what is happening in Dalit perspective and what is happening in the progressive world and what is which is right or wrong. Even it doesn't matter whether we can be into that and we can part of that change of the society and whatever it may be. They don't bother about that, but they're very curious to get into that and know what is happening in that world. So I think there is a very in Tamil there is a very good audiences Tamil reading audiences in Tamil Nadu. But the only thing is that we faced many, as Anand said, for an independent publisher, like there are many senior persons, there are many senior publishers, and I don't know whether they are all associated somewhere, and whether there is association or whatever it may be. When a new publisher get into this industry, it's very in India. I'm not talking in Tamil. In India, it's very hard to survive because even for a basic government procedures, we have a lot of I mean the lack approaching to whom to approach and how to make it done and everything, because we have ideas, we have a lot of we are searching for translators, and we are we have idea of reprinting the old books, and we have an ideas, but when it comes to a level of execution, we face a lot of practical issues. And for example, it's very worse in like this is a very worst case that you can't even get an ISBN a code at the right time. So this is a very basic problem actually. This is not something how you work and how you're working aesthetically and what your politics what politics you represent. It's all secondary. The basic thing is very worst in India. And I traveled 2 months back to Delhi for a very basic thing. So in this digital world, all those things should be done in matter of 15 minutes in front of Google. It has to be done. But we have no idea, and we keep searching and we keep seeking a help from a senior person. And so it's very, if you're printing a book for 30 rupees, 40 rupees, and if you're not worrying about anything, and if you want to place in a market, and if the money is the only motive, there is always market in Tamil Nadu. There no one questions you. No one questions you where you print, for what costing you're printing, you have ISBN or not, whether you have put books in an international fair, and no one questions you. If your audience is purely a Tamil, you can go do business. It's not a problem. But if you have, you have some sense, and if you have some dream and how your publishing house had to be, and if you want to run it professionally, there is no, platform in India to do all these things. So in this case, while experiencing all this, I can easily divide that audience, and in part of audience is everything is good actually. We can be productive more, so they are like more supportive. But all this from government side and the system, and we are facing everything. If these things supports us more, we can be more productive and we can be more creative, is what I felt actually in these 3 years. So I think it's 3 years is very less. I know to make all this judgment, but I'm just telling it from what I faced personally and what we facing personally.
Thank you, sir. Those are very astute observations. Thank you for sharing them. There's another question. When a book is translated to Indian languages, is it the translation of just one person you depend on? Or do you look at the translations of various people before deciding to publish it? And after it's translated, how do you proof check the translation? Kannan uncle, I think this is a question for you.
So can you please repeat the question?
Yes, uncle. So they've asked, when a book is translated to Indian languages, is it the translation of just one person you depend on? Or do you look at the translations of various people before deciding to publish it? And after it's translated, how do you proof check the translation?
Okay. If it's a translator that you already worked with and you feel you can depend on, then you know whom to ask, and if the translator accepts, then you can straight away go ahead and do the translation. But let's say that you are approaching a new translator, or a new translator is approaching you and saying that I would like to do this book, or I would like to do from this language to this language. In that case, then you ask for a sample translation and see how that works. If it's something that can be improved upon, you can send it back with your comments. And if the translator has an open mind to work with you, then again you can go ahead. You don't have the money or the resource to ask for translation from several translators and then pick the best. So that's not something that we do, and we don't have so many translators for that, and we can't afford to pay many translators and then choose the best. So you work with the translation that is available, and if that is something that that can be edited and worked with, then you make the effort to do that. So once you get the translation, we give it to one of our freelancing editors, and they work with it, and they work with the translator and try to work on the text, improve the text if possible, and then that's how we take the process forward.
Is 21 EJPF 28 guest wanting to translate something? Because there's so many questions from only this one guest. So I'll just supplement that if possible, Kannan. One is when we translate a book from Navyana, we manage to publish translations in Tamil, Kannada, and I do reject some. How do I reject? What do I know of Kannada? So I get it read by another friend who can read English and Kannada and check whether this works. Some of them are very enthusiastic, especially with Bhamar Meghvanshi, we had to reject a lot. And it will be, now it's a lot of translations are twice removed from the original for this entire panel, I'm saying. Like sometimes you will read a book from Russian into English, and from English you will translate it into Tamil, Marathi, etc. So this question of the original dead author or live author or whatever goes completely out for a toss. And you should allow for room for creativity. Sometimes translators will bring in something new. Sometimes translator will have to gloss something which is culture specific. And sometimes translators completely miss and do something else altogether, which the original author, Perumal Murugan, if he sits and reads his books in English, I don't know how much of a shock he will have. We don't know. We don't know. And he might just say, he might feel very pleased with, okay, something is happening. And how are you sure that when Perumal Murugan goes to French, that the translator is not actually consulting the English and doing it from there? No guarantees. No guarantee. There's no question of a original French book coming into Tamil. Sometimes it comes back. So these many other limitations are there. And several times when I publish translations into English, say from, for instance, my recent experience with Bhamar Meghvanshi, I could not be a Hindi. The Hindi, okay, I hope he passes on to something. The Hindi was not edited at all. No questions asked. We have no idea where he was born. It's a memoir. We have no idea what his name of his mother is. So there were all kinds of holes we had to fix in English, so much that the author went back to the Hindi and re-edited his own work and added 10,000 words to it because of the questions we asked in it. So the Hindi edition improved after the English intervention. So we have to give scope for these kind of levity, so otherwise it will be a very dry kind of exercise.
Yes, thank you, sir. 21 JIP 041, do you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, sir. I think it's for Kannan, sir. First semester of the GIP, we actually, learned about translations in certain languages that we can't really translate certain words, because it can be, the context can only be understood between the people who are speaking the language. And even with friends, we struggle to explain the context of that word. So you said that you translate very minority languages, right? What people have never heard of. So I feel wouldn't it be really hard to translate certain contexts of certain slangs and words? If you've been successful, about translating it, can you just explain how Like, I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So, so when it comes to let's say Icelandic or Norwegian or Turkish, we have no translator directly to do that from that language to Tamil, and we have to work through English. And now we do know, like for specifically let's say Turkish. Turkish is a culture that it has many cultural interactions with the Indian culture over the last thousands of years, and many of those things are common between Turkish and Indian languages or cultures. And when that comes through English, you especially can lose a lot of context, which is very common to Turkish and Indian other ways. So what we do, what I did do in one case was that when I had opportunity to travel to Istanbul about 12 years ago, I asked around and I found a university student who was working on the translations of Quran Pamuk. And so I for some way I found time to meet her, get an email ID, and I gave the email ID to my translator. And through all the 5 novels of Quran Pamuk that which he translated, he was in constant communication with that student, who was very happy to help him. And she kept hinting at him, telling him points where he might make a mistake when it goes through English, and pointed him in the right direction so that no, we don't make that mistake. For example, let's say a head cover can be either a scarf or a burqa, and so you have to be careful when you translate Tamil. And so he asking this question to that student, and then we became a professor, and then she helped us over the years. And through that interaction, I think maybe we have not made so many mistakes we would have made otherwise. And another way we can work on this, that in almost all the European nations, we have now Tamils who have settled down there over the years, Sri Lankan Tamils or Indian Tamils, and who have learned some of that language over the years. What you can do is that after you translate, you can send the work to them, ask them to read it for cultural context, and point out to us what mistakes you have made in terms of pronunciation, names, cultures, words, and try to avoid it as much as you can. There's no way you can make this a mistake-proof translation. I'm sure that some things have slipped out, some mistakes have been made, which we can't find out, and we have to wait for a time when we can get direct translation from many languages. It can happen. It may happen in the future, and that through if we can get a translator from Turkish to Tamil, let's say, the chances of mistake being made are less, definitely less, than working through English, which is twice removed, as Anand said. So it's a work in progress. So two people can sit together and work on a translation, and that way make sure that so many mistakes are not made. So you have to find your own way with every book and every language and every context, and try to do your best.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I think the translation thing took its own trajectory, but it was very interesting. Thank you all. Okay. This conversation has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you to the three of you for being here, Bhaskar sir, Anand uncle, and Kannan uncle. Think everybody sort of appreciates the significance of independent publishers in India, in our political atmosphere, in our cultural atmosphere, and in simply the educational aspect of having an institution that is willing to bring certain ideas and certain literature and certain individuals to the forefront and mainstream them. And in doing so, create an atmosphere that is trying to aspire to a more connected, a more empowered, and a more, if I may use the word, well, a learned sort of society. So thank you for the work that you are doing with all of your publishing houses. Thank you once again for taking the time to be here and for answering our questions so patiently and for giving us so many observations and insights about the publishing industry and your own perspectives about publishing. I think that concludes the panel for today. Amna, are there any words that you have to say towards the end? Okay. Thank you once again to everybody who came and attended. Vijayata ma'am, is there anything you'd like to say?
Thank you very much. Hopefully we can do this again.
Ma'am, I don't know if it is just me, but your
You want
voice
us to do this
breaks.
whole thing again?
No, not this whole thing. It will be good to see you all in campus for various other reasons as well.
Yeah.
We will collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Good to see you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meta.